Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me what you're all about.
So I'm Erin Redwing. I'm president of the Open Ordinals Institute, as well as CEO of Inscribing Atlantis. I had a very strange journey into Bitcoin. Astrology brought me to Bitcoin originally, so I followed the stars. I was an astronomer astrologer. That was kind of a double life situation. Astronomy, didn't know about astrology, but I was very, very into astrology. There was a really important conjunction that happened on December 21st, 2020. So end of 2020, I'm sure a lot of people remember how that year felt. It was very much a clearing out. But at the end of the year, there was this conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at the first degree of Aquarius, which is like an ushering in of the age of Aquarius type of energy. Astrologers were very excited about them. So I drove out to the beach to view the conjunction. You could see it right above the sunset. And while I was on my way out, I looked at my phone and I looked at my Robinhood app and I saw, oh, Bitcoin's back up to its all-time high of 18K. Like, that's kind of interesting. I should probably learn about this. Maybe this has something to do with what's going on. And that resulted in me completely diving down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I read a bunch of really interesting Bitcoin astrology articles, and I realized, oh, this is a really important technology for the age of Aquarius. And that was my journey in. It's a very weird entry point, but yeah, I mean, when I say I followed the stars, like I literally followed the stars to Bitcoin. I basically just went from being obsessed with Bitcoin to getting sucked up into the world of ordinals and kind of filling in all of the gaps for everything that the developers don't want to do. The devs, they want to sit at the computer and write their code, and like I just make sure that I like feed and water the devs occasionally so that they can keep doing what they do best. It wasn't very fun to build on Bitcoin. A lot of the low-hanging fruit had kind of been taken. And, you know, as a result, there was much more of a builder culture around Ethereum and other chains. And I think Ordinals has brought a lot of that back to Bitcoin. And you're seeing that with a lot of the like layer 2 startups that are coming in, and, you know, really just a lot of people that are kind of taking new opportunities and learning how to build on Bitcoin again. And so I think we're really just going to see more of that. From more of an artistic and cultural side, I think that very few artists have really wrapped their head around inscriptions as an artistic medium. And what I mean by that is, you know, there's a lot of technical difficulties when it comes to inscribing. And the ideal art for inscriptions is code art. You know, it's art that you make by, you know, essentially like making a website or something like that, where you're using HTML or JavaScript and you're creating art that's generated by code. There's definitely some really great examples of people that are doing that, but I really feel like there's going to be a renaissance in generative code art that's really technically interesting, and I'm excited to see where that leads. The project that I'm currently working on, which actually just launched yesterday, is called Ephemera, and it's essentially an inscription project that tethers Bitcoin block time to astronomical time. Bitcoin is actually a really effective decentralized clock. We're all familiar with Bitcoin as decentralized money. That's why we all love it. But it's also an incredibly good source of decentralized time, right? You decide that a block happens at the time that it happens. Next block is the next time, and the next block is the next time. And that's very important to the structural integrity of Bitcoin. The problem with Bitcoin as a clock is that if you wanted to kind of like understand when Bitcoin existed in time and space, it would be very difficult with the current timestamp on Bitcoin. The Bitcoin timestamp is a Unix timestamp. It's just a string of numbers that's time relative to January 1st, 1970. So imagine you're an alien or you're an archaeologist thousands of years in the future, and you're trying to understand the time at which Bitcoin existed. It would be really, really hard. Even though you have this really beautiful, complete ledger of time, you don't know when that actually happened. So one of the things that I think is really important is to try to tether that time to natural decentralized time, which is the motion of planetary objects, right? So what I'm doing is I'm taking planetary data, so the position of the sun, moon, Pluto, Mars, whatever, and I'm inscribing it on Satoshis from the time that they were mined. So basically you would have a sat, you know when the sat was mined, then I inscribe planetary data on that sat and essentially create a tether between Bitcoin as a clock to natural decentralized time. The way that I stay on top of things is just by being a curious person. I am decently technical, but I'm not a developer. And a lot of the way that I kind of get a read on, okay, this project seems like it'll work or not work, is talking to people and seeing how effectively they can explain their own product. There's a lot of people who can't explain their product, unsurprisingly, in this space. I think by going to in-person events, talking to people, actually connecting, and asking them very specific questions, not for any reason other than just that I'm curious, you know? It's a really good way to follow different threads and kind of learn about what's happening and how things are unfolding and why certain things are unfolding the way that they are. So you will not get the same answers from people if you ask them in written form on the internet that you will when you talk to people. I got involved with Nolcha because we were doing conferences. So we were doing Ordinals conferences, and Arthur basically approached and said, hey, you know, I can do the logistics and all the event stuff. You want to do the programming and kind of figure out like who should be there. I mean, that is like the best thing you could have possibly offered me because that's what I like to do. You know, I like to bring people together. I like to see interesting conversations unfold. Nolcha does such a great job. Arthur's so professional, and he really treats people right. I think that's the key thing is, you know, everyone who works with him just has such good things to say about him pretty much consistently across the board. And, you know, again, also very rare to find in Web3 and especially in events. You know, if you can find someone who really, you know, sticks to their word and follows through, yeah, it's the best case scenario. What's really interesting to me is kind of seeing how Ordinals and runes are interacting with the larger crypto ecosystem. I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I love Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is the one that works and will continue to work. And, you know, if I were ever to recommend someone get into anything in crypto, it's always going to be Bitcoin. And I'm excited to see Bitcoin kind of reabsorb a lot of what's moved to crypto, whether that's L2 development or NFTs or just cultural things as well, like just people getting into other chains because there's more of a culture of building or creating on other chains. I'm excited to see a lot of that come back to Bitcoin, and I like talking to people that are kind of like on that journey. Find me on Twitter at Realizing Erin. I also have a podcast called Hell Money Podcast. We talk all about Bitcoin ordinals. We do costumes every single episode, so it's visually stimulating as well. That's basically it for me.